Welcome and thank you for joining us today for Advanced Performance Analytics Radar Report, Data with a New Real-Time Context webinar. My name is Ellie Gould and I'll be your moderator for today's event. Our featured speaker is Dennis Drogseth, VP of Research at Enterprise Management Associates. This brings over 30 years of experience in various aspects of marketing and business planning for service management solutions. He supports the through leadership in business service management, CB systems, operation systems, service-centric financial optimization. Before I hand it over to Dennis, I did want to mention to today's audience that Dennis will be concluding his presentation by answering your questions. Please feel free to ask questions at any time by using the Q&A functionality located in the right-hand column of your screen. If you're in full slide view, simply look for the floating toolbar. You'll see a question mark icon. Click on that, and you can log your questions that way. Also, today's event is being recorded, and you will be receiving a follow-up email from Enterprise Management Associates tomorrow, and it will include the playback of today's event, as well as links to the full and free summary of the APA radar. I would like to go ahead and turn things over to our featured speaker, Dennis Drogseth. Dennis?
Thank you very much. So indeed, that's the topic, Advanced Performance Analytics, APA, which for some folks, I should remind you, is already not APM. It's a bit of overlapping circle. Other thing I want to say before I start really is I have a lot here. We had 22 years, I spoke to 41 deployments. And so I will do my best to stay within 40 minutes or so. If I move briskly through the slides, you'll know why. And part of my approach is to present the dimensions of advanced performance analytics through the vendors themselves versus trying to give you an in-depth discussion of each vendor, needless to say, is impossible in the time we have. There is a very long report available in our library that has really in-depth profiles for each of them that I would strongly recommend you considering if you're invest in, I think, this terrific area. So we're going to start by looking at what APA is. It's not an established market, at least that I'm aware of any other analyst firm. And then we'll look at some of the general criteria for selection for this radar, and we'll go through and address the various uses and vendor positions in context with, again, dimension around APA and what APA can do. By the graphics, including the trees here, are generated through fractals, which are extensions of chaos theory, which is one of the heuristics that was being applied or we were looking at in advanced performance analytics. Advanced performance analytics. I wanted to begin to see it as we hear a lot about big data, a lot about analytics, typically evolved out of a warehouse-centric view. We're looking at also big data and also analytics with extremely sophisticated heuristics in some cases, sometimes including warehousing. But the data is different. The different continent, different origins. One of the qualities is it's optimized for more real-time and predictive and real-time operational environments. That's a quality as it involves performance DNA. Differs from classic warehousing in terms of leveraging things like discovery and how it uses tiered data collection or structured data collection, the idea of trusted sources, and service modeling. Service modeling is very important to me in considering some of the values here. You combine that with analytics, and I think you begin to see some huge changes. There are a lot of heuristics, and we'll look at them that these vendors supported. So we're looking at rules-based event correlation, for example. It's truly a big data quality, and we'll look at the dimensions of what that is as well. Massive amounts of data in minutes and seconds in the cases. non-intrusive big data storage. About years ago, I was with an engineer, actually from the Ukraine, and we projected what the future of the IT management industry, I'm not quite sure how to sum it up, service management or whatever, would look like in actually 30 years. What foundations for that were. And one of the things we expected to see was deconstructing of the siloed tool sets, all of which did their own data gathering, all of which did their own data store, all of which did their own analysis, all of which did their own visualization, and of which did their own support for automation if they had, or business impact if they had any at all. This would be sort of rearranged so that there would be more layered optimizations in terms of data collection, analytics, automation, etc. And this was before the advent of the big popularity, I should say, initially in the 2004-05 timeframe of CMDB systems. That was one of the reasons we got interested in those, because we believed that the future would evolve towards federated data stores in support of cooperative analytic engines. We got the supercomputer for the point supercomputer. Well, that was a 30-year projection, and about 10 years later, we're starting to see a lot of federated capabilities, analytic tools that can feed and assimilate off many different sources. However, that does not mean that they don't do, and most of them do, at least to some degree, their own data collection as well. But the process is certainly underway, and the objective isn't necessarily to be pure, to have a pure set of layers, but to have kind of a shifting, so that solutions can be optimized to either collect data, analyze data, etc. We took out on a wide range of heuristics with the 20 vendors. You want to do the numbers, about 4.5% is equal to one of the 22, up between 4 and 5. And see, everyone has support for anomaly detection. You get with correlation comparators. I really have time today to go through all the dimensions of what chaos theory is about, or fuzzy logic, case-based reasoning, which is actually more often associated with service desk. But the message here is that, if you average this out, they certainly had between 4 to 5 different heuristics that they applied either to their suite or to a single solution. A few other points that we just highlight. Speed is really one of the big factors here versus classic ETL, right? Extract, transform, load. You want speed in data collection, spin analysis, contextual. How context is defined through either modeling or discoveries or topologies or trusted sources is distinct in APA. And that includes insights into interdependencies and relationships. Find flexibility in terms of where analytics are done, where they can be optimized, and how they can be tiered across complex environments. And this results in turnaround in terms of business insights as well as performance and capacity and other insights. General criteria for what we were looking at, what I was weighting. And right now, and I'll stress it more than once, no radar is perfect. It cannot be perfect. It's a generic approach to looking at a lot of individualized and complex design points. And so the best thing I can do for you is to be very clean and clear about, what priorities were in this radar. One of them was, what the gold medal, so to speak, in terms of weightings and values, was the amount of data that could be consumed. And you can see that in terms of architectural potential, you have nearly half, really, able to assimilate more than 50 million other KPIs within 5 minutes, sometimes within much less time. And if you look at actual deployments, obviously you'll see fewer, not quite so high. You'll see they're spread apart much more, but it's still a very substantial statement about the power of data collection across these 22 vendors. We're looking at a lot of diversity in what kinds of things are assimilated, and needless to say, and that was also valued. And I would say that depending upon you and your requirements, while I value that it was a natural parameter for AEA, you might have much more focused requirements. So a more focused set of data collection might be optimal for you. The vendors who had a broad sweeping set of options, how they collected data and where they collected data, got extra value here. So if you look at events and time series, those were pretty pervasive. Transaction, very central to a focus for us, as you'll see, in more ways than log files, events. Configuration, also very interesting when it comes to change impact in some of the use cases. Flow across a networked infrastructure, and then security-specific events, or Web 2.0, with AJAX components, and ultimately things to look at behavior, what I call enamel at the other end of the plastic in the network, the user keystroke. So were we, what were we biased about? This is really a top-down discussion, and so we looked very heavily at applications or services versus infrastructure or devices centric, and so that did favor certain of the 22 over others of the 22. So that one criteria. We were self-learning and predictive, and all of the vendors at some level had some capability for predictive, and in fact, this is such a fast-moving environment that they originally claimed they did not actually introduce predictive capabilities during the course of doing radar. There is, degree of that. So we looked at historical and sort of trending predictive, which is, more standard, and we looked at much more real-time operational, including up to 2 hours out and longer than 2 hours out. All that got high value. We looked for assimilative power and service modeling. Assimilative power could mean you did your own data collection, or it could mean you collected from other sources, but a broad range. And frankly, being able to pull in from a mixture of both, or having third-party integrations, was favored a little bit, just to show the breadth and eclectic nature of the analytic tool. Service modeling, and we're going to talk a little more about that when we get into capacity and change impact, was also valued because it can provide an extremely powerful context in which both physical and logical interdependencies can be understood. Analytics can be applied against them. How many people could be, what types of roles were supported, including, and in particular for the business impact, non-IT roles in terms of business development, online operations, etc., but also cross-domain operations. That was also favored. So again, some tool sets were more narrowly focused in terms of constituencies. Others were broader. That may, in the end, what you need may be more narrow in focus. But in the radar here, we looked for breadth. Also looked for realized versus just potential value. Whereas, talk about rocket science. There's definitely a lot of rocket science among these 20 vendors, and so the potential of what they could do, if you understood their analytic potential, in some cases was, huge. Sky's the limit. But we had to focus on what was realized, what was harvested in terms of actual reports and design, and what was priority for that vendor. And I say it's a very quickly shifting sand, many changes as these vendors evolve and these capabilities evolve. We look for cloud as a resource in terms of things like cloud bursting and things that would support expansive analytics and adaptable analytics they will need. And then we also looked at managing cloud environments, public and private, external, etc., software as a service, infrastructure as a service. Quick value. I would say if one of the consistent features of APA, and you'll see it in a lot of years, is these solutions are in many cases self-learning, adaptive, and some are self-configuring. Not all of them, it's not all three for all of them, but that's one of the contexts for APA. And hence minimal administrative overhead as well. Another natural outcome. You'll see data on that right now. Administrative overhead for the analytic pieces of either the suite or a pure play analytic capability for ongoing administration once deployed and integrated, very low. This is again a differentiation from basic monitoring, which often has a lot of rule sets or configuration issues in getting it to work, and also very different from the traditional rules-based solutions where you have a lot of administrative overhead just to get the analytic to work. Use cases. We have three core use cases, then we'll get them in depth. Technical performance, which really end-to-end service management, includes apps, voice over IP, and other services. Again, breadth of service support was valued. Making sure that understood even at a business level in terms of the SLAs being met, et cetera. So there was a sort of a business side to that as well. For business impact, which I'm actually going to address last year, really targeted at a more refined set of business impact values that could support stakeholders very specifically as well as IT stakeholders, and bring the two of them closer together in optimizing business outcomes, not just IT performance. User experience was heavily weighted as well as one of the foundational values for business impact. Is also valued in technical performance, but more for business impact. Change impact and capacity optimization, arguably cases, but we pulled them together. Service modeling, very critical here in many ways. Understanding the impacts of change, configuration changes, and understanding interdependencies in terms of capacity planning and optimization across the full service infrastructure. We did not break out, but we did give awards for strengths in integrated security and integrated DevOps. DevOps was actually a much more pervasively addressed area than integrated security in this. We're going to look about our first bubble chart, which will be the technical performance. But just those of you who have not seen a bubble chart or confused by them, you're going to see, first of all, what they are is a landscape, really. For looking at different design points around two fundamental axes, function versus cost. The horizontal axis is really focused on cost-related issues, deployment, administrative overhead. Versus is about what we call functional value and architectural strengths, so the sort of the power of the solution. And the bias, and those vary, is based on the presence in the market, corporate power, corporate presence. It's relevant to the market as well. We have technical performance analytics. You can see these are all powerhouses to begin with. So they tend to cluster together here more than in any of the other use cases as well. Also because technical performance or some level of performance was something that all of them did, and all of them brought value to. Just a couple of comments as you kind of look across here. We looked for breadth of services support, and so one of the things that was favored across these vendors was, did they support web apps, custom apps, industry-specific apps, could address mobile environments and apps specific to that environment, voice over IP, rich media, etc. And so again, you'll see a favoring on breadth there, as well as breadth in terms of things like virtual server environments, .NET, Java, various permutations of cloud, thin client, VPN, wireless LAN, mobile cellular, etc. Breadth was really favored, or niche specifics. And I guess what we'll start doing now is looking at some of the individual vendors reflective of technical performance and what I highlighted in this category. So the first year was actually stood right kind of in the middle of this chart, with a strong value in all three use cases, very balanced overall, really emblematic of a lot of what analytics APA can do across the board, but with a focus on technical performance analytics, e.g. e.g. enterprise. The structure is 360-degree service visibility. They pull a lot of sources, very flexible across the infrastructure and the application environment, very strong in VDI in particular. They also have a consistent kind of analytic pool that they can use to optimize how they do analysis. It's kind of a hybrid, really, between that sort of overlay that doesn't do any of its own data collection and a hard, fast monitoring tool that analyzes just what it collects. So this sort of single footprint for consistent analytics is something that I'm seeing, especially more in the mid-tier enterprise environment. And if you look at the quote, a classic statement about what AP solutions can do: learns what normal behavior looks like and alerts administrators before performance issues get out of control. I mean, you cannot summarize technical performance analytics better than that. A fascinating story. Again, all these stories are much more complex than I have time to honor here. But let's look at some of the sort of the technical performance aspects. The value, the HP was a very strong value leader in technical performance management. They have a number of solutions. But I had a chance to examine through conversation with deployment, Service Health Analyzer. It fits in with that self-learning, support for multi-vendor environments. It's still early in the game, but right now, for instance, it supports Agios, Microsoft, Scalable, Intelli, as well as leveraging its own BSM 9.1. So it's kind of an overlay, but still depends on or profits from other investments within its own portfolio as well as third party. HP also has Service Health Optimizer, Health Porter, Process Insight, which is fascinating capability in the business impact arena, mapping processes to performance, server management, and a brand new operational analytics, which is really interesting. Introduced again at the very end of this radar, because it integrates Health Analyzer with Operations Manager and ArcSight Logger. So again, that clear, the dynamic of this is a changing market, a lot of innovation, a commitment in investments in analytics, and look at what the value is for the quote. After a couple hours of initial deployment, boom, got an incident diagnosed, and it was they faster than they could have seen otherwise. Scoring well as well administrative overhead. Needless to say, in technical performance, we're looking at triage a lot, and we were looking for breadth of capability, and not all of these might apply to you, but you can see the breadth of what some of these solutions can do, and of course, most of them could do probably, again, I haven't averaged out, I would guess 5 to 6 easily of these options. Interestingly, security scored at the bottom, going down from the bottom, and then specific to mobile device issues, less than half. Issues browser really critical and increasingly critical as you look at user experience, less than half. You're going to move up, but of course at the top, a strong support for systems and database and cross-domain, which is fundamental to most of the APA solutions here, and network and storage follow closely. Look at Prelert for a moment. Prelert is a relatively new company, a real innovator in this space, tremendously powerful capabilities. If I could give a score for just the future potential of the raw power of the analytic, Prelert would be a real total real star. It did a strong value leader here. Has not yet invested as much in change in capacity, although that's near on the horizon for the company, the business impact. That's what it calls third generation machine intelligence. When you look at harvest the eclectic, in terms of getting points being eclectic as a single solution, looks at, of course, events, logs, traps, polls, time series, usage data, etc. Versatile in what it can and understand, and kind of create what I call a dynamic narrative around in terms of which came first, second, and third, what's likely to be anomalous in this sequence. And you see again a very strong reduction time for diagnostics with this APA investment. Fluke works. Visual Networks Systems is a brand, of course, associated with Fluke, and the VPM Xpress is actually one of the very few sort of appliance-based capabilities as APA. One of the things I want to stress in looking at APA dimensions is you think of advanced analytics as being heavy, expensive, and cumbersome. Many of these are actually very lightweight and very quick time value, and not that costly in some cases, especially they're optimized more for the mid-tier enterprise. I would say VPM Xpress a little more focused there on the high end, although they can scale if need be pretty well. And again, IntelliTrace is their analytic capability. It delivered exactly what they were hoping for. I should finally mention is there's even though it's an appliance, Express and the network's opportunity brings in a BSM connection as well, an app dependency connection, and strong user experience. So it's a nice package in that sense. Another real powerhouse. We got the award for best infrastructure optimized analytics, and seemed to be displacing a number of other solutions every time we spoke to a deployment. Fast time to value, very fast deployment capability, very minimal administrative overhead. Really a classic APA solution, and was only sort of if you say harmed in a sense in Radar by the fact that it was infrastructure centric, and we were in its roots, and we were a little more service and application centric. So again, very impressive tool, very happy users, and another feature of APA, consolidation of tool sets. I mean, we used to see with the CMDB as well, that sort of breaking through the silos, and a cohesive view of a reality that's, in this case, very dynamic and adaptive. So, integrations were we looking at? And that was another area where we gave rewards for breadth. And let me flesh out this chart for you. Job scheduling tools, by the way, one of the more interesting to me, and that has tended to be a ghetto of a kind. All these integrations were evaluated in terms of the Radar, and in particular as extensions of technical performance. Say some were very prominent, with app performance and network performance being very dominant at the top. And then as you get down to job scheduling tools, there were only 4 vendors that did that, and security really low as well. So this is a general sequence overall. And that's a way to add value. What can you? We looked at both import and export. Some of these, as you can imagine, were a little more import, some were a little more export, but we looked at both. Without integration, was a very strong value leader in technical performance management. well in business impact and well in capacity as well. If you look at the evolution of APA, a handful of vendors you would have looked at maybe 5 or 6 or 7 years ago. Intuitive is one of them, and maybe the single standout that you would have thought of back then. They got the award for the APA Market Definer. One of the things that is fascinating about their design point is learning relevance to an outcome and being able to rank based on relevance. It's optimized and intuitive to performance of a real-time value. If you could preserve it, it could also be extended to planning service levels, whatever. Eclectic data collection, really an overlay analytic for, and the quote I choose here is to stress the notion of the value of bringing in huge amounts of metrics from other sources. Higher scope. The vendors that I have to say they have been favored a little bit by the criteria we were looking for in terms of breadth, flexibility, modeling, etc. And I'll stand by them. I think they're important. And certainly FireScope was a standout fit for that design point, especially its stress capability, a really powerful and adaptive and extensible capability. And I think in the quote you'll see, what I like best is there seems to be no limit how we can all use this capability. FireScope was one that showed real strength in DevOps as well, but balance across all use cases, value leader in 2, and harvested cloud for scalability and adaptability with a lot of very interesting heuristic investments in analytic power. So we're going to be moving to our next use case and looking at actually this combines, and we combine in one question. It's for both impact, change, and capacity. And one of the things that again, we looked at breadth. I get clear, we also weighted this so that if from a use case perspective, gave great weight to things like capacity, capacity planning integration for that use case. With business impact, we get great weight to things like business financial planning. So again, this was import, export. Can you import from these? Can you export to these? For those of you who believe a data warehouse is only a destination, there are a large number, a significant number, I should say, of APA solutions that took from data warehouse to process with their own analytic power. Executive dashboard, of course, would be an example of an export, most likely, but not entirely. We'll talk a little more in CMDB CMS and the importance of that to get more into change impact. Social media, that area that we just touched upon, but very interesting in terms of what is all this about. One of the things that analytics is about is enabling more effective dialogue and communication. And social media can work to support that all the better. C was our house in change impact and capacity optimization. And I think BMC is a very interesting story in terms of how they got there as well. The various ways in terms of development strategies and design strategies to move toward advanced analytics. BMC combined very innovative architecture with some really intelligent acquisitions. So, for instance, it acquired one of the APA own jewels, ProactiveNet, back in 2007, which, if you were to say, back then, was represented APA, or if you use the acronym at all, Intuitive and ProactiveNet would have stood out as probably the first two. More recently, in 2010, it acquired Intuitive for cross-domain capacity planning and analytics. Most recently, Corradian for user experience, which is a leader in that environment. You mix those all together and bring a united pool for analytics, which is where EMC is and is going. That is to say, it's in process, but certainly already very real, sort of unified analytic across performance, change capacity that's holistic. It's not limited to virtualized environment, for instance, which is a lot of attention is being spent in capacity. One story of how to build that. And look at the quote again. It reflects the value of assimilation, brings together, and empowering strategic decisions. This is the bubble chart. You can see for BMC, VN, a lot of strengths in the vendors in capacity, a little more spread out than a pure play technical performance. About 9%, in other words, all but two of the vendors had some predictive capabilities in capacity and change impact. When we look at a change impact, we looked at, for one, to what degree could you understand configuration. So we looked at service impact configuration, virtualized infrastructure, application release changes, network changes, storage config, security-related impacts, desktop config, because ultimately consumption and often at the endpoint. And I just read you the order in which they occurred. Most had system configuration, virtualized infrastructure, and those are the dominant two. And a fair number could support application release changes and network config changes at some level. Another real powerhouse in change impact and capacity optimization. A couple of things to say about IBM is no vendor is, I would say, more conspicuously investing in analytics, more aggressively investing in analytics, including APA as it moves down the road than IBM. And so as a number of the solutions, one field test, one was a limited availability, we had a broad suite of capabilities. Gave IBM the Vendor to Watch award in 2013. And bang me out, they actually came with new news about pricing and performance yesterday to change the bubble chart. But the point, this is a very dynamic environment. All of these vendors are moving very swiftly to change their footprint in the analytics space. Here I talked to several deployments, really focused more on capacity in the virtualized environment and cloud, where IBM has been very effective and very focused over the last several years. IBM also has performance analytics solution that is more akin in terms of being a performance overlay to Service Health Analyzer or Intuitive that's moving out as well. Accepts is an interesting story in its own right, and from a PA perspective, if I had to put a headline on Excel ops, it would be efficient, effective, consolidated, model-aware, integrated security, where it gets an award, gets its own data primarily, and that's distinctive here. Excel is very much focused right now on doing a data collection. It's focused often in the mid-tier, in which it can scale up very nicely. Extremely powerful discovery and app dependency in a performance context, and definitely a vendor to watch as well. And really brings together, sort of in its own words, changes the narrative around management and optimization when it comes to infrastructure and security. Again, you get that consolidated toolset story, operations and security and across operations, typical of APA. Was another standout solution, but technical performance and change in capacity, and as all these strong capabilities and business impact. If I had to write a headline, it would be a suite with more effective analytics, sharing, visualization, and navigation. The kind of, again, app dependency modeling optimized for performance. should mention that also a matter of sort of detailed riverbed technology has, in Q4 announced its intentions to acquire OpNet, which would bring it strength certainly in the network and WAN optimization arena. Again, looking at a suite, but a suite that had really strong capabilities, share analytic insights across it, so that it's not a pure play black and white solid tool set story. And the solutions we looked at were App Response Expert, which some of you may go back and remember was once network physics, a hugely innovative capability in terms of looking at flow and performance and user experience. App Mapper, which is the app dependency capability. Kernels Expert, which is a more detailed look at transaction analytics, including cross-tier transaction traces. And another strength in lifecycle OpNet has put a focus in app lifecycle into DevOps, as well as capacity and change. So, what is it? Why is it important to understand app dependencies, APA context? Again, it can power the analytics to bring context to decision making. We looked across these two vendors. Both had some level of app dependency, and 100% had some level of insight into infrastructure to application. That is to say that they generated a true model, but they have automated insights into those interdependencies. A surprising number did have some level of modeling capabilities. And we look at infrastructure to infrastructure, app to app, app component to app component. A superstar in terms of optimizing the sort of app dependency model, but for really all three use cases. In fact, this Neebula really did well in all three. They got a value leader in the change impact capacity. They are again an innovator. They're already delivered a number of handshakes to actual CMDB CMS deployments, and that's a bi-directional statement. That is helping to update and keep current CMDB deployments, as well as leading off more configuration insights from the CMDB and change insights, change impact. They're clearly supported relations with HPCA, BMC, and ServiceNow. And that's, again, a dynamic statement as well. And again, a quote that's typical of APA: fast time to value for itself in 2 months. This is more useful than you might think with the APA investment. Zyrion Traverse, a vendor that's actually third in the market and shown a tremendous versatility and a thought leadership and design leadership over the years, and has one of the most pragmatic approaches to modeling, which is a container-based model that's it's developed and used now, I think, for certainly more than 5 years through its product Traverse. Recently introduced dynamic capability in Traverse Analytics module. Again, also configuration focused on the network side, scalability with its DGE or data gathering engines, really strong broad data collection, very responsive and supportive of innovative environments. And one thing to say about modeling is it gives you options to optimize what you do, both in terms of change, capacity, planning, business impact. That's a good thing. Some people get stuck with that, but it's ultimately a big value. So, we specifically asked in this environment about a CMDB, and nearly half had CMDB-related integrations, as you can see, although there's about 45%. Some were virtual in doing work by through their own CMDB and through party CMDB. The next two vendors I'm going to speak rather quickly about were the only two vendors to achieve value leader status in all three categories. Both had demonstrated support for service modeling of their own, but this, of course, this applies to Zyrion. Both had third-party CMDB integrations as well as their own CMDB capabilities, and both made significant investments in analytics as well, and both were very assimilative. That is to say, they could take in data from a lot of different sources, as well as mine data to some degree themselves. I think, for Interlink, which is, both should say, are still small companies, and neither are based in the U.S., Interlink in the UK. But it is a superstar in modeling, analytic power, innovation, optimizing just performance, but also changing capacity from the business perspective. That's one of the keys to business context applies to changing capacity as well as it does to pure play business impact. EMITE, extreme eclectic in its range and power, being adopted by some very large enterprise environments, a truly next generation architecture as well, a value leader in all three areas, and integrating with a lot of different solutions, and a modeling capability that's being used as a sort of central model in some environments to bring various vendors' models together cohesively. And again, that sort of ended opportunity. These AA solutions tend to be, a funny word, polymorphic, right? If they're really well architected, they can take you many places. And this is true certainly for EMITE's service intelligence platform. EMITE is based in Australia. We move on to the last use case, because we don't have a lot of time, but it's one near and dear to my heart, and that's business impact. And I think the best way to understand business impact is a bi-directional mirror in which the analytics that you bring through APA go back and look at all the things that impact business outcomes, but often through the consumer, because most business outcomes in the end depend on a consumer of some kind, and looking at optimize from both sides of the mirror. Here is, as you'll see in the bubble, star here, and has made some very aggressive moves to really capture both sides of that mirror. I would say if there's any vendor in the radar that stepped back and said, wait a minute, a transaction is a dual-sided mirror. Let's optimize to that. It has to be Optier. And Optier has a lot of other capabilities in terms of core APM as well, core UEM as well, strong support for tiered transactional awareness, and its own app dependency, including some CMDB integrations in a way as well, where it's performing some updates to CMDBs. This quote is, if I had to pick, my top 5 or so quotes from the 41 deployments, this would be among them. It is a complex business ecosystem. Had to optimize the business ecosystem for its outcomes on an hourly basis. At Flight, he was complaining that a lot of the warehouse vendors didn't understand the need to have real-time business optimization across an ecosystem. So here's the bubble chart on business impact. Again, more spread out anyway than certainly technical performance. We looked at a number of features in terms of values for business outcomes like revenue and process. Well, you looked at unique values in terms of consumer productivity, because activity leads to business outcomes also, 64% of our vendors had strong productivity statements. Those might range from app utilization to user IDs in terms of understanding how to support the user, abandonment rates, which are clearly related to business outcomes, and basic degrees of productivity, proficiency, and business effectiveness. With applications like SAP, for instance, that can be a huge value. Foglight was a value leader in business impact. And, a foundation here that there are an extremely strong user experience capabilities, one of the best, including some replay capabilities, starting to look a little bit like a brief almost. Very high scoring. Actually, here you see a quote in terms of dynamic capabilities and self-learning, but here I'd like to read a quote from the replay, which I think speaks exactly to value. We're beginning to see when and why people are at least potentially bailing out of place orders. There are tie-ins to performance. And replay capability, we can look over the user's shoulder. We look at its value beyond IT more and more aggressively take it to more business stakeholders. So again, that sort of movie, the movie version of the book, so to speak, in terms of APA. Next, a few vendors I want to highlight underscore the fact that business impact doesn't need to be this expensive, cumbersome thing. All of these are fast time to value, engine, very innovative, a strong customer base, growing up from the mid-tier popularity, combines external capability for looking at synthetic transactions, site 24/7, it has in more than 40 locations worldwide with classic applicants manager. So it's strong user experience and again, fast time to value. First, designed to support a sort of system-centric view of the application business ecosystem with a central pool, analytic pool. So it's really optimized to do, again, integrated analytics, a strong and fast time to value, and but also very creatively and aggressively look at business specifics like revenue, business activity, consumer and application usage, and end user effectiveness, and provide a strong sort of actionable root cause answer to what it surfaces. Analytic, again, fast time to value. Apnomic Swan has also got a sort of partner solution, OpsOne, with an automated automation, and has one of the most elegant design points in terms of looking at transactional latencies, volumes of consumer behavior, and then app to infrastructure data. And although I couldn't think of a way to give an award for elegance, if I had, I probably would have gotten it for that combination. Offers its software as a service, and again, there are strong links between automation and performance here. And you see business service quality with minimal staff. This is real business insight in a resource-constrained environment. So when we look at what kind of business impact areas, who's doing what, to say almost everybody who's looking at service levels, internal, external, response time for a business service, getting down revenue, still a fair majority. Some level of business activity, needless to say, this varied a lot based on the depth of the vendor involvement. You down a little more than half looked at some level of business process, and again, that varied based on the level of depth in the what the vendor did. And we tried to honor some of those variations in the outcomes. Service desk, OpEx, and brand-related impacts that could be understood in various dimensions, supply chain, and conversions from competitive websites, which pretty much predicated something that would look at an external universe for other sites doing. Splunk surprised me in that, I think most of us would associate it with log files, rightly so. Splunk, on the other hand, has moved very aggressively to supply kind of agnostic, flexible approach to data collection and data analysis, is moving to a more predictive capability, and has surprisingly out of the box and proven capabilities to support business as well as IT stakeholders I was really impressed with what they could do there. Very reasonably fast time to value with a lot of flexibility. Users love the visualization that they can provide complex data environments. One of the things to look at as we are wrapping up is role support. And if you're truly business impact, we wanted to understand who you supported from a business perspective. You can see, again, across the 22, line operations, number one, line of business, where you got down to things like partner and supply chain. That's still very much an evolving area. Business development and planning also evolving. Vendor and a real powerhouse also, value leader in two cases, CompuWare with its IntelliTrace and Gomez had the award for best DevOps in a very competitive environment for best for DevOps, partly because of the breadth of its capabilities and because of code level capabilities in IntelliTrace. Gomez is, in case you're not aware, one of the world-class sort of outside the firewall testing environments for mobile user experience, cloud, and cloud ecosystems. So you get geographical insights. You can get those industry-aware insights. And recently, CompuWare introduced what it calls its Gomez Global Testing Network. So it can look at switch away from Mongolian telecom if you can see an issue in your supply chain ecosystem in real time, or could compare and contrast how you're doing potentially to other businesses in your vertical. And it looks at, right now, more than 3,000 different customer environments. A lot more one could say about CompuWare. I think the quote here is interesting, again, in terms of that versatility. Looking at it primarily for performance, realized, wow, we could use this in sync with marketing planning, the impact on the Super Bowl, trying to think more deeply about how to bring all that together and manage our third-party dependencies. The message here is have 2 minutes. I can keep it short. Automation and advanced analytics go hand in hand. Automation without insight is automated train wrecks. Advanced analytics can provide a context to deliver effective automation, and you can see different levels of integrated automation down the list here. Needless to say, service desk ticketing probably the number one, and WAN optimization being in this group because we're getting more app-centric, fairly limited workload. I was impressed to see for load balancing kind of moving up from the bottom. And of course, IT process automation and runbook is sort of middle third there, a huge growth area for APA. Slide in the last minute here. What is APA? How is it changing the game? It's to use a sort of something out of chaos theory, a sensitive influencer, as well as a very visible force in the market. Changing upward and downward scalability is a factor. Should have brought that out more, but many of the vendors are showing that they can, support small as well as large environments. Redefining management solution design, real focus on the human value of the business service, and allowing IT to focus on value, just cost. So supporting what I would say is ultimately cultural transformation of IT to a value-driven versus a cost-driven unit. Now, Rob, I'll turn it over to you, and the no time remaining that we have for any questions.
Great, thanks, Dennis. For you who are interested, I'll take one or two questions. Before I delve into those, I did want everyone to know that the full report as well as the free summary are available on the EMA website. You can just go to enterprisemanagement.com/research, and you'll see those listed under radar reports. Also send those links in the follow-up email. As Dennis, let's just take one or two questions. The first is, how does a prospective buyer go about deciding which of these vendor suites a specific need for performance analytics? Simply, how do you even go about deciding what buy?
a great question, and I wish I had more time, but the short answer is you start with yourself. You start with who you are, what you need, and where you want to prioritize. And don't pretend to be generic, and don't look for a generic answer. When you make those decisions, then your ability to use, say, a radar like this and go through and see which fits you the best is the right way to do it. It's not a winner or loser story. It's a which design point is right for you.
Makes sense. Thanks, Dennis. And I'll take one, just kind of a two-part question, but we really just have time for the first part. Moving into 2013, do you see the analytics needs of users changing as the amount of data grows?
The needs of users growing as the amount of data grows. And I think the other thing I would say is if I look across these use cases, I think we'll see a grow over time anyway, and certainly maybe the latter half of 2013, more definitive optimization around each use case of certain vendors. But even if another thing to consider, I mean, are you looking for something that could support you across all these use cases? Are you looking for really only one long-term? So I think you'll see growth, diversification, and more individualization per use case.
Thank you, Dennis, and thanks to everyone who joined us today. As I mentioned at the start of the call, you will be receiving a follow-up email from Enterprise Management Associates tomorrow, and it will include the link to the full report, the link to free summary, as well as an on-demand version of today's webinar. Thanks again for joining us, and enjoy the rest of your day.